Hey everyone, welcome back. This is going to be season one, episode three, and we are going to focus in on the ROM tab. So this is Roto Motion and Douglas GB. Take us into the ROM tab, Douglas.
All right. Hey, thanks. So we have our tester turned on, connected to the board, plugged into the CPU socket. We are getting a good clock, so we know everything's happy. We need to load the config, so I'm going to load space dual, and that tells us, that INI file has the ROM information, where they are in memory as well as where they are on the board. And I'm looking at this and I notice actually the Space Dual new INI file has a small little error here. It's only that's a location on the board which is wrong. So let's fix that really quick while we're here. So what you got to do is right now you have to kind of work your way down through this list. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the fifth one. So 3, 4. Oh no, fourth one. Oh yeah, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here we are. KL1. That should be J1. It's ROM 105 is at location J1. So fix that, and then we can save that config. Space Dual new. Yes, replace that. Okay, so that's it. So this is important to know. Is this is where your ROM uh, definitions and all the checksums are in that INI file. This also, in the setup tab, is where you tell it which version is on the board that you're testing. Because when you go to the ROM test tab, there's no control there to determine which version you're testing. You got to put it in here. Space Duel only has one version, so it doesn't apply here. But other games with multiple versions, you gotta tell it here. Okay, once you're set up, you can go to ROM test, and yeah, there's J1 is fixed, so we can choose how we want to, what we want to use as our reference. So I'm going to use the fluke signatures and test my set of ROMs. And my first one is wrong. And that is because, in fact, on this board I have the free play ROM installed in that location, so it's not going to match the Atari signatures. The fluke signature for the stock Atari ROM. So that first error is kind of expected.
So Douglas, on the setup tab, I noticed there was a turbo button, and I think we made reference to that might make things faster or slower. What
Yeah,
is that?
yeah, it's great because so this is pretty fast, but it takes a bit of time. If we go back to setup and turn on turbo, the FPGA can run at a much higher rate. So turbo, I don't even know the exact details, but turbo mode, turn it on, and if we do that same test, see how much faster, like 10 times faster. I don't know. It's much faster. So yeah. So normally I always go in turbo mode. I've not found any instance where it's been a problem. Take that with a not every possible scenario has been tested, but I haven't had a trouble with it. So yeah, I would turn that on. It's a big time saver. And if you are doing some tests where you're not sure about the results, you can always come back here. That's why there's a way to turn it off to make sure that's not the issue. But again, I don't think it. I think it's fine, and it speeds this thing way up. So
Wow,
okay,
wow,
so
that really does speed it up.
yes, very nice. Uh, which checksum you're going to use doesn't really matter. Um, they are just different. Like that's the Atari Catbox checksums. These are the Fluke checksums. There are other cyclical redundancy um, The other interesting thing here is save to file. So this is a case if you and compare to file. So these kind of are kind of related. You can compare them instead of to checksums, which are kind of a shortcut way of doing it, and are 99 or maybe even more percentage of the time perfectly adequate. You could compare them to the entire content of the ROM chip to a file, because the files have the entire content of the ROM chip. These.
So you're saying it's more thorough if I do a test from a file versus CRC?
Technically, yes, it is more thorough because it's checking every single bit. You can see this has all 4096 bits of that ROM. Uh, so, so yeah, it is more thorough. So again, if your checksums are probably going to be enough. That's what we've all been using for years, but yeah, it's nice to have the option to check every single bit. There's a small chance that depending on the algorithm that's used to make your checksum, that a bit somewhere in the ROM could be wrong, and then a bit somewhere else in the ROM could be wrong in just the right position so that the checksum gets calculated, like they offset one another, and the checksum is the same even though the bits are wrong. So I think, again, that's why it's there, is for that extra thorough check of your ROM. But in
And
this case,
I have another Space Duo board, and I also have an extra set of ROM chips that I know are good. Can I make my own files?
you can, right, and that's what that last section is save to file. So this is a good example of when you would need that, because like I know this ROM is good. It's a free play ROM. My board works, right? So that ROM must be good. But it's not in it's not a factory. There's no it's not in my ROM folder. It's not in the accepted set of Space Duel version 1 ROMs. But I know it's good. So yeah, if I want to say, hey, I'm going to put this ROM in all my Space Duel boards, and I don't want to keep having this error come up, I can save the Space Duel, the free play image, to a ROM file. So this is not really a test, it's more of a function, but when you click that button, it's going to save those files. So now I have created the gospel, if you will, and now I can go and compare my board to those files, and of course they pass because I just created them. But yeah, in your question is, if I take this known good board, save them to file, put in my unknown board, and compare them to file. That's exactly.
Wow, those are pretty powerful features.
Yeah, right. So now
So I'm
my
curious, what is the bank zero in the first bank memory error section? I noticed that didn't light up, but do you ever use that?
yeah. So how can we do that? So I'm gonna go back to setup and say that's the folder that I just, when I created those files, that's where it went. I'm gonna change this to, so there space. I'm gonna change it here. Select that folder. So now when I go, so those files in that folder I've just selected are, something's wrong with those files. So I'm getting, again, this is a known good board, but when I compare it, my known good ROMs against those files, I get these errors. And you can see now, when everything was passing, this was blank. But now that I have errors, this will actually tell me which bits are wrong. So at memory address 4000, which is the beginning of R1, I think, bit 0 is fine, but bit 1, 2, and 3 are wrong. And then those high bits are all right. So the 1 means the error is here. So, if you are troubleshooting like a bus problem, data bus problem, if you got this column of errors and it was like a one was in the second position in every single memory address, then you'd know, oh, it's there's something wrong with maybe that pin that's carrying the D1 bit is dirty or something, or the socket is bad. So this
And I
is
guess I can always go back to the schematic and look up uh, in the memory map exactly what those are.
right. Yeah, you can. So, like if you look at uh, oh, where are we? Memory map. Yeah. So here, yeah, 4,000. The this is at the end of the spatial schematics. Address 4,000 is the beginning of program ROM. So yeah, ROM 0. Um, and here you go. You can see it corresponds exactly. 4,000 is the beginning of program ROM.
So that seems more of an advanced feature of the ROM tab, but that that's very interesting.
yeah, so for example, if when the ROM's on the board, the tester says it's bad, but you pull it out and you put it in a ROM reader and it confirms that it's good, well, where do you go from there? This will let you dive a little deeper into what exactly is failing and giving you the wrong checksum or not comparing right to the file. Yeah, very powerful. It looks deceptively simple, and when you get all green lights and all okay, great. But there is power here to make your own uh, images, to compare against them, and to go down to the bit level and specific addresses and see what's wrong. Oh, and
Wow,
then the
that
last thing, sorry.
oh, I'm just gonna say I now I know how to test my own ROMs. That's huge.
Yeah, the last thing is when you can also disable, like this one passes. So if you get consistent, like it's always passing, then you can say, all right, well then I don't need to spend the time to test those. Um, you can skip you can skip testing those. So this is pretty fast because Spacewheel has small ROMs, but with bigger ROMs, if you're having trouble with just one of them, you could turn off all the rest and just test just that one uh, and save yourself the time. And here you can see when I turned off the 4,000 range ROM and tested just this one, I have problems, something, again, it's not a problem by ROM, it's a problem with the file, but you can see the errors now start at address 8,000, so it lets you really zero in on a problem. And that's it for ROM test.
All right, we will see you back, everyone, for episode 4, which we will go into the RAM test. We'll see you then.